Ancient Egypt and the first Pharaoh. Now, in this lecture, we shall explore who were the ancient Egyptians, what did they look like, and how did they live? How did ancient Egypt come to be? Who united the lands, and under which circumstance were they united? How has our impression of ancient Egypt been corrupted, and how has media served to corrupt our perception of ancient history and of the politics at the time? Modern depictions of ancient Egypt have been extremely varied for a multitude of reasons which we shall explore. The Hollywood depiction of ancient Egypt historically has been far from the truth. Now, what I want you guys to do is explore the following. Why might the actors, which you see here above, collectively all look the way that they look? Why have they been chosen to represent an African civilization but look the way that they look? Why might Hollywood have chosen to do this? Now, the truth is that when we see ancient Egypt today, we are looking at Egypt after a number of invasions which led to interbreeding with the native ancient Egyptians. These invasions by the Libyans, the Assyrians, the Persians, the Macedonians, Greeks, Romans and Arabians, the French and the British would have all played a part in changing the image or the current population of ancient Egypt. Now, if we think how one successful invasion of European forces changed the population of America, we can have some idea of what 9 successful invasions did to the population of Egypt from around 700 BC onwards. Invasions changed the native population as a result of genocide, foreign disease and intermarriage. So this leaves a question as to what did the ancient Egyptians look like? Fortunately, we have historical records, models, statues and biological samples. We can draw on a multitude of sources of information as evidence. Sheikh Anta Diop, Robin Walker and Jean Vukuete have all explored this question. Now, when we look to the literature, the ancient Greeks coined the term Ethiopian to describe the ancient Egyptians. This translates to burnt-faced people. The Egyptians also named themselves Kam and Kem, which translates to coal-coated, and their land Kemet, which translates to black land. However, the name Kemet may be in reference to the soil rather than the skin tone of the ancient Egyptians, leading to greater discussion. The ancient Greeks gave the first historical accounts of eyewitness interactions with the ancient Egyptians. The historian Herodotus states in a few passages that the Egyptians were black or dark. According to most translations, Herodotus states that a Greek oracle was known to be from Egypt because she was black, and that the natives of the Nile region are black with the sun. Black with the heat, and that the Egyptians were black-skinned with woolly hair. Diodorus of Sicily writes, the Ethiopians say that the Egyptians are one of their colonies, which was brought into Egypt by Osiris. They even allege that the Nile was originally underwater, but that the Nile, dragging much mud as it flowed from Ethiopia, had finally filled it and made it part of the continent. The first people of ancient Egypt are recorded to have come from the south, Upper Egypt, and migrated upwards into Egypt as the climate changed and the Sahara Desert expanded. This is modern-day Sudan. The first kings of Egypt also came from the southern areas of Egypt. This includes Nama, who we will learn about later. We call southern Egypt Upper Egypt because the ancient Egyptians used the flow of the Nile to dictate the positioning of each kingdom. The southern part of Egypt is upstream from the Nile. It is therefore called Upper Egypt. Harmachis reigned in Nubia, upriver from Egypt. He left there with his son Horus, a warrior god, who conquered the whole country for him. Now, this is a historical record that might also border a myth which has been passed down, and it features or is been quoted in the book The African Origin of Civilization by Sheikh Anta Diop. Now, let's start to look at the physical appearance of the ancient Egyptians. The appearance of the ancient Egyptians has been depicted many times, but has ultimately been ahistorical, i.e. not historically accurate. The reasons for this we will explore later, but in discovering their true image, we can consider the below. When we look at the skeletal structure of the ancient Egyptians, the closer we get to the equator, when we look at a population, the closer that we get to the equator, the more tropically adapted people tend to become. Tropically adapted means longer arms and longer legs with a shorter torso. The longer and thinner the object, the higher its surface area. This means that more heat can be dissipated to prevent overheating. These proportions can be seen in depictions of ancient Egypt and also throughout Africa. And we can see this when we look at, for example, the MASAI people of Kenya, when we look at ancient Egyptian wall art. Another feature to consider is prognathism. Prognathism is where the jaw protrudes from the face. This feature is more common in ethnically African populations. We can also see this mirrored in the paintings of ancient Egyptians. Another feature which we can look at is hair. Ancient Egypt was an extremely hygiene-focused civilization. Soaps and perfumes were household items because hair makes us hotter and can be a breeding ground for lice. Most Egyptians therefore shaved their entire bodies. However, there are some studies to show that their hair curled very, very tightly. We can also see the protective hairstyles which they wore, which is commonly used today by individuals with afro hair to preserve hair health and also to reduce knotting. Also note that the combs they used in ancient Egypt very, very closely resemble the afro picks that a lot of people with afro hair use today. Another feature that we can look at is skin tone. Skin tone has provided some confusion as the ancient Egyptians commonly used a colour code when depicting men and women. When men were depicted as red and women as a yellowish colour. However, when this code isn't used, the ancient Egyptians are commonly pictured with dark complexions and African features. Thankfully, we also have eyewitness accounts. Now, a lot of the time, these come from the ancient Greeks who were present at the time and who travelled to Egypt during their lifetime in ancient Egypt. Herodotus states they have black skin and frizzy hair when writing of how the Egyptians resemble Colchians, who were the first settlers of Rome. Aristotle wrote that those who are too black are cowards. This applies to the Egyptians and the Ethiopians. Ethiopians meaning burnt-faced people, which was a term used to describe all Africans. There is another extract from a Greek poet who said, "I noticed the crew with its black members bringing out the white tunics," and he was speaking of Egyptian sailors. Ammian Marcellin or Marcellin of Rome states the men of Egypt are for the most black and brown. As Egypt and surrounding areas developed, many people migrated from the Middle East, Mediterranean and other areas of Africa. This led to a change in the population of Egypt, which was compounded by recurrent invasions. But as we see, Egypt was very much an ethnically African civilization which went on to influence and be influenced by other African and Mediterranean civilizations. Wolof, a language spoke in West Africa, for example, is believed to have close connections with with ancient Egyptian languages and is still used to this day. So the task which I would like you to explore is why white Egyptians? Why might the actors above collectively all look the way that they do? Why have the actors who have been chosen to portray ancient Egyptians look the way they do? Why have Hollywood chosen to portray Egyptians as non-black? Might this be an example of subconscious bias, or is it something else? Please take your time, explore this question. Feel free to have group discussions and maybe even group debates under obviously the discretion of your teacher, and feel free to pause this and then when you're ready to get going again after you've had your discussion and your debates, you can press play again.